Welcome everybody. My name's Chris. I'm going to present today, and I don't know how much of the screen is visible to you. I think so. If anybody's having trouble seeing any of the slides, what I'm going to be doing is showing slides, of course, and then also some live demo of Salesforce and walking you through a few things. And so if there's any time where the audio has issues or you're not able to see something on the screen, please hit the Q&A button and send me a question or the chat, or you can, I think you can just unmute and talk to me. So all of these slides are available. You may have, if you pre-registered, you may have received these already. If not, you could get them after the presentation. We're also doing an audio recording. I want to make this valuable for you, but let me jump on in and show the title, which is all about Salesforce. Hopefully you're in the right place. Salesforce data quality. I just made up this name, honestly. You know, we'd teach 5-day classes, and this is a 1-hour webinar. So basically, I pulled some interesting stuff from one of our 5-day classes, and wanted to share it with you on the webinar. And so I just decided to call that the Salesforce Data Quality and Organization, which could go in a lot of directions, but I specifically wanted to talk about accounts and contacts and how to use some of those little used tools in Salesforce that a lot of people don't even realize are there, but they are. And many of them are just built right in. Some of them you have to turn on, but then there's really very little, if any, configuration required, and it allows you to get to mirror the real world much better in Salesforce than you would otherwise. So my name's Chris. I'm going to do a quick turn on my video real quickly, just because I think it's nice to know who you're talking to. So hopefully you're seeing a little bit of my video there. I'm not going to leave it on the whole time because I want you to see Salesforce, not me. But I'm sitting in Nashville, Tennessee, and I am a VP at Stony Point, and we are Salesforce experts, a Salesforce registered, actually silver level consulting partner and training partner, and we do training through WebAge sells our training so that we can bring our expertise to businesses like yours. And so we've got a lot of expertise in Salesforce, and we use it internally. So I'm just going to tell you right now, I'll be sharing some of my live real world Salesforce with you. I do have a sort of a training database, or as you know, training org available that I can share with you if we need to sort of play with it any. And I'll be bumping in and out of that. But I actually want to show you the way we're using it in real life at Stony Point as well. And I think somehow my slides are set to auto advance, and that is going to drive me crazy. So I'm going to see if I can turn that off, and I have no idea why it would want to do that, but look at that. Let's see if that does the trick. And then we can actually look at the slide we're on instead of magically moving to the next one. Okay, so so just introducing data quality and organization today. Then we'll talk about account hierarchy, account teams, related contacts, record types. Some of these you may have heard of before. Those are the ones that were sort of advertised as part of this session. I went ahead and added a couple of more slides on validation rules and workflow, just in case we have time. So I want to warn you right now, if we're running short on time or if there are a lot of questions, we'll stop here and you can look at the slides and figure out at least the basics of validation rules and workflow. But if we have time, I'll share that with you as well. Those are I really think these first 4 areas are mostly about organization and making Salesforce sort of match the real world of how accounts are organized in the real world, how contacts and how teams work on specific accounts in the real world, and making sure Salesforce reflects that. The last 2 areas that I added on are really more about what you might consider the data quality, and making sure that that users are putting in legit information. that they're not putting in crazy, stupid stuff, or that their naming conventions that their naming follows a naming convention. So, so we'll see what we get to with that. All right. So when I talk about data quality and organization, the whole idea here is that, at least my belief is that software, and I know Salesforce doesn't like, a long time they used to say, we're not software, we're the cloud. It's different. You don't have to install something from a CD, but for just in general terms, I'm going to say software, it is all about simplifying and automating the stuff that we would otherwise do in the real world. So, there are things that we used to have to use paper and pencil for, we used to have to use calculators for, or even we used to have to fly across country and meet each other for. We're using computers now to make that stuff simpler and quicker, and in a lot of ways to automate it so that there's less manual stuff involved. And this may not be a blanket statement that applies everywhere, but for the sake of this conversation, software should do that. And what we're taking is stuff that we would normally do in the real world and just putting it into software to make it better. But the problem is that gets really frustrating when the real world data isn't reflected right. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've seen so many situations where a company will say, hey, this guy, Joe, he's a customer of ours because, you see this with like insurance or wait a minute, like more real estate companies. So a company, I worked with a client one time who was selling houses, right? They developed and sold houses. And so they used Salesforce to track all their customers who were buying houses. Well, one of their customers who bought a house is a mortgage lender. All right. So he's a client. He's buying a house. But that mortgage lender also, actually, I think it was the other way around. It was the mortgage lending company that was using Salesforce, and a home buyer, the real estate agent used him for a mortgage, and so that real estate agent was a client of his, a contact who was at the account of the real estate developer who hired that real estate agent. But at the same time, that real estate agent was also a referral source, because that real estate agent would send all kinds of referrals over to this mortgage lender. And he was like, well, I want to track that the real estate agent is related to, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other families who are my clients, but that real estate agent is already associated with the development company. So how am I going to, what am I supposed to do? Have multiple records of the real estate agent? Or do I just sort of try to remember that? And it's one of those things that for a long time people said, well, yeah, you got to figure out some workaround or just, remember it. But there are ways to handle that in Salesforce now so that it's less frustrating. So you actually can match that real estate agent up with the actual company that she works for, as well as the referral source for the other people that you're working with. And I'll show you a couple of examples of how we're doing that. We're not in real estate, but we're running into the same sort of thing here at Stony Point. And so that's the second example here. There are also situations where a parent company has multiple offices, where there's a hospital. I've seen this with clients before, where there's the overarching hospital parent company, and then each individual hospital. And we want to track them. We don't want to lump them all together into one account, but at the same time, we want them somehow connected to each other. Well, that's something that we should be able to do with Salesforce. And in fact, we can. And then, you got those people who move around from one company to another, contacts that you've known for years, and they might still be prospects that you want to sell to, even though they moved to a different company. And so we want to be able to track that history. In the past, this is something that even in the past few years, there are times when I've taken a contact and I say, well, He doesn't work at that company anymore, so I'm going to make him inactive, and then I'm going to create a whole new contact record working at the brand new company. So I ended up with 2 contacts in my system, and that's not necessary anymore. Nowadays, you can actually have that same contact essentially move around within accounts in your Salesforce, and you can see the history of that. So I'll show you that. And then there's just some situations where you've got different types of details for different types of contacts. So, in our world, we're hiring candidates, and we've also got employees, of course, and then there are our customers. And there's different stuff you want to track with each one of those. Like with candidates, we track things like, how is this somebody who's willing to relocate? How much are they willing to travel? What salary are they looking to make? We don't need to keep track of that with our customers. And so it's a completely different set of information. There's no reason to have all of those details on every contact record. And so we'll split those up and have, even though they're all contacts, they're going to have different sets of information. And those are record types. So, all right, so let's start at the beginning and make sure we understand what an account and a contact are. These are universal objects in Salesforce. They exist in Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, platform, whatever you're doing with Salesforce, there is an account and a contact. You may have changed the name of it, but they work the same way. And the reason I bring this up, this is obviously super simple stuff, but you would be amazed at how often I hear people say, hey, something's wrong with Salesforce, Chris. I need you guys to help us fix it. There are companies listed in here as accounts that we have never done any business with. And they say, well, did you what do you mean? And they say, well, to us, our billing department says it's an account if we bill them and they pay us money. Well, okay, that's your billing department. That is different from Salesforce. In Salesforce, the word account and the account object can be used for any organization. So that actually means companies, as we obviously know, companies that we have done business with, as well as companies that we would like to do business with, prospects, right? Also, companies that we might be competitive with. Those are accounts as well. Or there might be companies that are partners rather than actual customers. So any type of an organization would be an account, right? And then secondly, a contact is used, it's a record that's used for a person, and it's usually associated with an account. It doesn't have to be, but in most cases, that person's associated with an account. So easy enough in most cases. The one unique situation that we run into is we've got candidates who are applying for jobs, and they don't work for an account yet. I'm not going to bother putting where they work for today. So I actually have one account that's called candidates, and within that candidate account, I have all the contacts who are candidates. So anyway, those are people. The account is the one that throws people off, though. So let's look at account hierarchy. This is, and I feel like I don't like to look at slides a whole lot. I like to look at real Salesforce. So let me flip right over to real Salesforce. So this is actually a developer org. This is fake data right now, but we all know accounts let me actually show you. This is the fake data. If I was in here and I said, this, you can see down here, United Oil and Gas. There's United Oil and Gas Corp. Then there's United Oil and Gas Singapore, United Oil and Gas UK. I've got 3 different accounts there now, but they definitely should be connected. The Singapore and the UK are sub companies or independent subsidiaries of United Oil and Gas Corp. But there's actually in this, we want to make sure we can see this. If you're using Lightning, you probably have a little icon right next to the account name that is the account hierarchy. And it's funny how we can use the system for years and never even notice a couple, little things like this icon. Some of you may have found it and clicked on it. Some of you may not even know it's there, but if you click on that, you can see the hierarchy. Now, this isn't set up yet, so I need to set this up. What I can do here with this hierarchy is say, it is certainly possible to reflect in Salesforce that those United Oil and Gas companies are all connected in some way. And the way you do that is you go to the child company. So the one that's the smaller one, and you open that record, and I'll just edit it here. And there's a field for parent account. And so under parent account, this is one of those crazy fields that it's there on a lot of people's screens, but they just skip right over it because they never knew what it was for. If I put in United Oil and Gas Corp as the parent there, now it's obviously reflected in the details. I can see that as the parent account, but I can also hit that cute, cool little icon for account hierarchy, and suddenly I see that those are connected. Now I also need to go back and connect to the UK one because I've added Singapore. Let me do the same thing with the UK. I'll edit that record and set the parent account for United Oil and Gas Corp, save that. And now they're still independent accounts. They're each going to have their own set of activity. They're each going to have their own set of contacts. None of those get commingled, but I can they are connected, and I can see that here, and I can also do some reporting based on this and so forth, where I've got the hierarchy built out. Now, the neat thing about this, as you might guess, is that I can get to this from any one of these. So I'm on the United Oil and Gas UK. I can look at the hierarchy and see it. If I just go to United Oil and Gas Corp, I can hit that button and I can see the hierarchy. Some of you may be using this for org charts of contacts within a company, and that's certainly doable as well. It works exactly the same way, but you're just setting it up for account hierarchy. There are a couple of things to note here, and I'll pull the slide back up. This is built-in functionality. It comes with Salesforce. In Lightning, it's also in Classic, but it's turned on in Lightning. It's, as I mentioned, similar to the org chart and contacts. Now, this is interesting. You can have up to 2,000 accounts connected together in hierarchy. You're probably not going to hit that limit. But this is kind of cool. You can customize the columns of information. So I don't know if you noticed, but when I hit that button, it's showing me now the account site, billing state, phone number, and then the type and account order. If there's different type of information that we want to see there, then we can easily change that. We just go into setup and look at hierarchy. It's always easiest to do that with the search bar now in Lightning. They've made that a lot easier to find things. And you find the object manager. We're looking at the account object. And so once I open up the account object, hierarchy columns is down there on the left, and you can, it just displays the default, but if you want to change that around, you can change the columns around. So that's kind of a fun thing. You can also, we looked at how you build that hierarchy. You actually have to edit each individual child account and select the parent. So that's, it's a little bit tedious to set up if you've been using the system for a long time and have not set this up. It'll take some work to build that hierarchy. But once, if you start using it and you keep using it going forward from this point, you're going to be building it as you go, and it won't be that painful. I showed you that little button next to the account name. You can also get to this from a quick action, which is up here. They look, some of us would call these buttons, but in Salesforce lingo, these are called quick actions. And view account hierarchy is there as well. And as you know, Lightning screens are so totally customizable that it is possible to, that they might be in a different place on yours, but that can be tailored and customized however you want. The last thing to note about this is that, and this is pretty obvious, but I always like to share the security and permissions information. You have to have read permission on the account record in order to view, and on the individual accounts, they have to be shared to you. And you have to have edit permission to edit. Duh. Okay, that makes sense. But if you're going to come in here and edit edit one of these child accounts and associate it, then you have to actually have edit access. So one last thing that I want to show you before I leave that is my real live Salesforce. And I have this, more compact view on the screen. So there's a lot more data that I can get to. But this is a real company that we work with. They've a real customer of ours. It's also another partner in the Salesforce system. It's a company called Simplus. Well, we learned just through the news, a press release a couple of weeks ago, that Simplus was acquired by Infosys. So initially, we just had this standalone account out here called Simplus. Well, as soon as they got acquired, we came in here and edited this account and went into parent account and selected Infosys, which coincidentally is another company that we're already tracking in Salesforce. So we already had the account record for Infosys. We just matched those up, saved those, and now we can see that relationship together. I think another interesting one is NTT. This is a company that just keeps acquiring other companies. I don't know if I've built this one out, but yeah, they bought Dell Services. They bought a company called CenterStance. And so my initial example on the slide here was using this to build sort of an org chart of parent and child, like I mentioned, the hospitals, where there's a parent company hospital, and we use United Oil and Gas. But this can certainly work we use it much more for these companies that keep acquiring each other. And that way you can keep all the history of them as independent companies, but now you've got them related to each other in Salesforce. Okay, so that's account hierarchy. I'm going to take a quick look and see if there are any questions. I don't see any, so I'm going to move on. Account teams is the next thing we want to look at. And this is actually really cool for two reasons. For one reason, it's a great way to just reflect what's happening in the real world in terms of a sales team or a service team that supports or works with a particular account. So we can identify all those team members. We can see what their roles are or record what their roles are. And that's as opposed to kind of the simple way of using Salesforce, which is where you really you only get to see the owner of the account. So the other thing about this, so in one way, let me just show you, it lets us see the people who are related to that account. And I don't have anybody on here right now. We haven't been using it a whole lot, but internally. But I could say, for the account team, I can add members. I am, normally, let me back up here a sec. For this NTT, I am the owner of this account. So account owner, Chris Udy, that's me. And that's nice, but there are other people involved with this account as well. So I can actually add them here. I actually want to add myself as the sales. I'm going to go ahead and put, I am the owner of this, but I want to put that let me put business development for what I want there. And you'll notice the other thing that this does, this account team, and really one of the most powerful things about it is that it allows you to grant permission to other people. So as many of you know, if you've got Salesforce org-wide defaults set to anything other than wide open, then none of the records are shared unless you manually share them. So, or unless you have a hierarchy that shares them and sharing rules set up and that sort of thing. But normally, in a lot of cases, you might have to manually share accounts in order to let other people have access to them. But in this case, if I want to let my colleague Rich see what's going on here because he's helping me out with NTT, I can set him up as the guy who sells technical training. And I'm going to go ahead and give him, I don't necessarily want him to mess with the, I tell you what, this is because my security is set to, it actually is wide open here. So he's got access to it. But normally, if you've got your security locked down a little bit more, you can set that to read-only access if you want, and so forth. But I can set Rich up. Steve is our company president. I can set him up as the executive sponsor. And what this is going to do is two things. It's going to share this account so that those guys have access to it, but it's also going to show at a glance who's working this account and what their role is on it. So if you have an account that you're doing a lot of business with, you know, there may be, depending on the size of your company and what you do, there may be, you may want to attach the billing person to this. You may want to reflect the customer success or customer service lead who's in charge of this account. So you've got the account team may reflect not just the salespeople working it, like a salesperson and a sales engineer, but also service people, billing people, accounting people. Anybody in your organization who touches this account can be reflected here under the account team. And again, that's serving two purposes. One is to reflect what's happening in the real world, and the second is to grant access to the account record. And as you saw, when we grant access to the account record, we also have the option to specify that, you know, I'm going to give it read-only access to the account, but maybe read-write access to the contact. A salesperson might not get any access to cases, and a service person might not get any access to opportunities. So you can get really creative about what level of permission and access you give to people using the account teams. Now, if any of you are looking in your system right now while I'm talking and you're trying to find the account teams and you're not finding it, that's because this is one tool that it is fully built out in Salesforce, but it's not turned on by default. So you do have to actually get an admin to go in and enable it. And I'll show you that real quickly in my developer org, in my training org. So if I go into setup and I look at, you know, I'm talking about account teams. So I'm just going to search for account teams. It's the easiest way to find it. And once I get to account teams, there is the only thing I can do is enable it. So it was already enabled in my live system. This is my developer org. So what I'm going to do here is check the box, save it. Now I've got account teams. So, and then what this says is when you've added account teams, it turns on the functionality, but you may also, you should probably set the system up so that you can actually view those people who are on the teams. So make sure you add this to your page layout as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and get them on the related list. And now I can do some setup. I can create these team roles. So remember how I set in my live system, I set myself as the business development, and we had an executive sponsor, and we had a sales person for training. Well, the default is that you've got account manager, channel manager, all this stuff. There may be completely different roles that you have in your organization, and you can totally change these any way you want. These don't do anything. They are just for your information. So you can make them say whatever you want. You can delete some of them. You can have 250 of them here if you want. But they are only here for your information. But as you can see over here, it's actually nice to have them because you know, Rich may always be a sales guy doing technical training, and I may always do business development. But guess what? With a different account, we may flip-flop roles. Rich may be the one who's doing the business development, and I may be the one who's listed as sales. Or as a VP, I may be listed as the executive sponsor on some of his. You know, so the roles may change depending on the account you're working on. And so you've got the flexibility to make those changes. Then the other thing, the last thing that I want to show you about this is that you can, I showed you how to manually specify team members, but you can also set up a default team. So check this out. I'm going to go to, I tell you what, I'm going to remove all these members from NTT because I just showed you those for an example. I mean, they actually are true, but but I'm going to try this. I don't know if I've got a default team set up, but if I click add default team, that just saves me. Yeah, look at that. I've got me and Steve in the default team. So that saved me. You saw how long it took me to add individual team members because I had to select the name, I had to select the role, I had to give them all their different permissions. But if I've got the same team that's doing a lot of stuff For instance, if I'm a salesperson and I always work with the same, I've always got the same manager, of course, and I've always got the same executive sponsor, and I usually work with the same solution engineer. You know, so there's a team. The manager and the executive sponsor may not be on every call, but I still want to include them in my team. Then I can set them up as a default team. And you do that, each individual user gets to set that up. You just click on your profile picture. If you haven't ever put your picture in here, it's going to look like Astro. You know, Astro's last name is Nomical, if you didn't know that, the little mascot of Salesforce. So Astronomical is over there. And you just click on, or you might have put your own picture in there, but you click on your profile there and settings, and then you'll find, or again, I like to just search for it. You know, search for team, and you know that, of course, didn't work. It's actually an advanced user detail. So if you go to the advanced details, it's down at the bottom in the related lists. And so I guess the search doesn't find it yet. I've got to go down here and get to it. So there are a couple of different teams here. Skip over that first one. The default opportunity team is listed there, and then there's default account team. So we've been talking about account teams all along, well, for the past 5 or 10 minutes. And this is where I would set up a default account team. So in my live system, that's where you'll see that I've got me and Steve set as the default account team. So let me just find that. Default account team. There's Steve. He's got read-write access to everything. He's the executive sponsor. There's me. I've got read-write, and I'm business development. If I wanted to add somebody else, I could. If I wanted to put Rich on every one of these accounts, I could do that and make him the default. So that's super easy. It makes it quick and easy to add teams for accounts. Now, the other thing that you may have obviously figured out while I pulled up this screen is that there is something called a opportunity team as well. And you may be using these already. Oddly enough, these are turned on by default, even though the account team is not. So if you've been working with opportunities and you've ever noticed that you've got a, you believe you have a, here's the related list over here on my live system. It's in a different spot. So you've got the opportunity team down there by default. And you can certainly add more team members there, or add the default team, or change people's access. So it works the same way. The difference is, you know, is this the team that manages the entire account, or is this the team working a specific opportunity? Some accounts are so big that there might be a team managing, you know, selling into the one business unit, and a whole different team that sells into a different business unit, especially if we're talking about one of these big companies that's had mergers and so forth. And so you've just got multiple teams working on it. So each individual, and the other thing is, you know, roles change over time. So, so I might have been the account owner all along, but for an opportunity 6 months ago, I had one sales engineer helping me out, and you know, she moved into a different role. So today, my newer opportunity has a different sales engineer. So that all that stuff, those opportunity teams can change around. But obviously, we saw where you could change the default. The administrator also has access to change the default and can configure that on the individual user record. So there's not a default for the entire org. It's really a default for each specific user. So hopefully that all makes sense. Take a look, see if we've got any questions. That's account teams. I've got a quick little scenario just to give you an idea. I've given a couple of examples, but just to throw it on the screen here, GenWatt is a fake company that we use in our training classes. GenWatt has implemented a new customer management process in which every internal salesperson, no matter whether it's B2B, B2C, is going to have an assigned success manager who should have visibility into everything the salesperson is doing. So each success manager is going to support multiple salespeople, and they just need to be able to see and edit all the account and contact information for the salesperson they're working with. So this is a quick, easy way. As a salesperson uncovers a new opportunity, that salesperson can can very quickly, that salesperson can very quickly, add the new account once they've uncovered, they've got a new lead, they've converted it to an account, and as soon as they've added that account, they can come in and set up the default account team, and that quickly and easily shares that account with everybody else who needs to have visibility into that. So pretty cool feature. Now in class, if we were doing this as a full 5-day class, I'd have you all set that up right now. In fact, all of this, I'd be sharing a little bit with you, and then we would take some time to do hands-on. You'd have your own developer org. You would build this stuff out, practice with it, try it out, and see it in real life. We just don't have time for that now. But I did want to share with you on since there's so much security involved with account team sharing, I want to hit a couple of bullet points here. This is only relevant for sharing when OWD, or the organization-wide defaults, are set to private or public read-only. If everybody can see everything, then sharing doesn't matter. So hopefully that makes sense. But if it's set to private or public read only, then all of a sudden account team sharing becomes really important, because that gives people access and you don't have to do it all manually. The team role has no impact on sharing. It's for information. That's what I was trying to tell you here, where you can, where I had Steve set up as the executive sponsor. That doesn't give him anything special. All that is a label that goes on his record as the team role. So the team members, just an FYI, they have to be Salesforce users or partner users. You can't share stuff with platform or chatter users. They have to have a full license, basically, or partner user license. And to be able to get access to the account through that system. As we saw, you can give them read-only or read-write access, but you can't give full access. Only the owner has full access to. So even though I've got multiple people on this account team, and Steve is my executive sponsor, he's the president of the company, he ought to be able to do anything he wants. But from a sharing perspective, I am still the owner, which means I am still the one who can delete this account, add other users to the account, that kind of, or share it with other people, that kind of thing. What I've done is I've given him read-write as much access as I can without giving him full access. And then this is kind of cool. Sharing is automatically applied to any new contacts, opportunities, or cases. So now that I've got Steve listed as the executive sponsor, if I go in here and create a new opportunity for this account, I'll get to some of this in a little bit, but I create a new opportunity to sell them something, then Steve is automatically going to be listed as the account, executive sponsor on that one. So, so I don't have to go through and manually do that with each new opportunity. So pretty fun stuff. I mentioned already that there's the exact same, well, very similar functionality with opportunities, except that that's actually turned on by default. So same story though. You identify the team members working on an opportunity, and you could specify additional team members. It grants people access. This one, I mentioned it is by default, it's turned on. You actually can disable it if you decide you don't want to use it, but I'm encouraging you to use it. And one interesting thing about opportunity teams is the administrator can actually mass reassign teams. So if somebody moves to a different department or different role or something, and there are multiple opportunities, open opportunities going, or maybe somebody's territory changes, then the admin can go in and mass reassign those. So it's not like a one by one fixing up those opportunities. So quick business scenario here, very similar. Our company implemented a new sales process, so every internal salesperson will have an assigned sales engineer, and that person needs to see all the opportunities. Now, that sales engineer is not necessarily associated with the account. That sales engineer doesn't necessarily need to see and edit all the contacts, right? The sales engineer is really just dealing, and certainly doesn't need to deal with the cases. The sales engineer is really just dealing with the opportunity, one specific opportunity. And so that person may not be a member of the account team, but will just be a member of the opportunity team. And that way it allows the sales engineer to be responsive and to see those things that happen on the opportunity. So same stuff here. I just copied this. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing as we said with account team sharing in terms of the security. It's basically the same. Now, case teams work the same way. I don't know how many of you might be using cases for managing support queues and things like that, but there's such thing as case teams as well. And actually, these are a lot more common because of customer service queues. You know, whereas in the sales world, a lot of time each account has one salesperson, right? And that one salesperson owns the account. Whereas with customer service, there's a whole team of people supporting him, you know? And so that account might be supported by a whole bunch of people, the entire support desk or whatever it is. And so these are much more common. People are used to these, but I wanted to share them here just for kicks anyway, since we're touching on teams. These are managed a little bit differently. They're not manually set up with each individual case, but they do the same sort of thing in terms of giving, sharing access and allowing the permissions to view and work with things. So here's a quick little comparison. With accounts and opportunities, the role, that one field we looked at, like business development or executive sponsor or whatever, that's for information only. It doesn't determine access. With the case, it actually determines level of access. So case is very much a unique bird here. With the account, it's account and opportunity. It's set by the record owner. So the case, it's automatically set by case assignment rules. So when a new customer service request comes in, the case assignment rule does its thing and automatically routes that to the right team. Whereas account and opportunity, as we saw, you manually add each individual member, or you can manually apply the default team. With the account, you can share all the related stuff, contacts, cases, opportunities. With the opportunity, obviously, we're dealing with opportunities, so that's the only thing you're sharing. In the case, that's the only thing you're sharing. So that all makes sense. The account and the opportunity can be maintained by either the user or the system administrator. As we saw, the user can go in and set up his or her own team. Whereas if we're dealing with cases, that's all managed by the administrator. You know, individual customer service agents can't decide who's on their team. And then with the account and opportunity, there's one team for each user. So your default team, you can only have one default team. If you want to do anything other than that, you're going to have to make a manual change. Whereas the case, it's a predefined case team for the whole organization. So this is not, this is not the most interesting thing about the presentation or the webinar I'm doing today, but I wanted you to see this slide mostly so you could see the kind of thing that we're doing in our classes to prepare for certification exams. Because when it comes to passing an exam, like if it comes to working in the real world, you can look this stuff up anytime you want. You can find out how to use it. And some of it's intuitive. But if you're preparing for an exam, we know that the exam questions are going to ask, certification exams going to ask questions about this stuff. And it helps to have it in a table so you can easily kind of get a feel for all these different nuances of the different types of teams and study this essentially. So that's really an exam help. If any of you are preparing for the exam, you're welcome to keep that slide and study it. All right, let's move on to our next piece, and that is related contacts. So this one I absolutely love, and this is new. I should have looked up the release this came out with, but this was not around a few years ago, and I've still got old data in my system that that makes it obvious this wasn't around a few years ago, because this is the situation where we've got contacts who might be related to more than one account. And in the past, if a contact changed jobs, we had two options. We could either edit that contact record and move her from the old account to the new one, which didn't seem quite right, because then all of the activity that we did with her at the old account, all that activity is going to move over to the new with her as well. And we're like, that doesn't make sense, because that activity was associated with that activity. It was related to what I did with her at the old account. I don't want to lose any history that she was ever at that old account, because I may need to look back at that for historical record. So the other option was that we leave her there in the old account, and we also create a contact record for her in the new account. And so we might have Jane Doe at the old account, and then have another Jane Doe at the new account. And obviously there are a lot of Jane Does in the world. That's okay to have two people with the same name in the system. But in this case, they weren't two different people. It was one person, and we had two contact records. And we all know the horrors of duplicate data. And we don't want that, and we want to avoid it as much as possible. So Salesforce released this feature called Related Contacts, and it is so helpful in accomplishing or solving that dilemma, because now we can take that one contact, edit her record, and show that she changed jobs, but there's still the history showing that she used to be at the old job. And so let me show you one of those. I think, who do I have who has changed jobs here? I've got this guy. Oh, this is an old one. So John Murata. See this? If I look up John Murata, I worked with him back at Salesforce, and then he went to, I think, PwC, and then he went to another company, and this was like 4 years ago. So look at this. I've actually got 4 John Muratas in here, and they're all the same guy. But that's because that's the way I used to have to do it. And he was listed as inactive. Let me see if I could do this. Well, he wouldn't be a good one. But I tell you what, I'm going to do it anyway. So John, I can't even keep track of where he was at any given time. I used to write it in the description. Yeah, look at this. So he was in alliances management. I had to type this up because there was no easy way to remember it. He was at PwC in 2012. He moved to Capgemini in 2013. He left there and moved to Wipro in 2014. And somewhere along the line, he was at this WSO2. It would be a whole lot easier if I could just move him through those. So I know he was at PwC initially. So let me find the Murata at PwC. And then there he is. Then he moved to Capgemini in 2013 and WSO2 in 2014. So here he is in his PwC record. And check this out. If I wanted to, I could just come in here, edit this, and say, you know what? He left PwC and he went to Capgemini, another company that we work with. So we've got Capgemini in there already. And check it out. When I save that, now look at this related list. I can see where can I see it? Where are his accounts? I must have done something goofy here. I wanted to see the related account. Well, maybe he wasn't a good example. Doesn't make any sense. Because I wanted to show you that that we could see that he moved from one account to another. Let's just do it in the developer org. So I've got Andy Young. I'm just going to pick somebody here. Andy Young. Let's say he was working all along at. Let me hang on just a second, because I may have to do a lot more configuring than I can do in 5 minutes here to set him up. Well, that's really strange about John Murata. I don't understand that one. Let me fix him back and see if I can show you another one that I've dealt with. All right, well, I fixed him back. I don't know why that's doing that. Let me see if my friend Ryan Northington, I think he's more recent and I've actually tracked him the right way. So here we go. So Ryan was at Accenture. Well, technically he was at Cloud Sherpas for a long time. They got bought by Accenture. And so he was at Accenture. They called it Cloud First. And then somewhere along the line, he moved to Simplus. If I actually knew the dates, I could put those in here. I just, I was a little bit lazy and didn't fill all that out. But all that happened was I've known Ryan since he was at Accenture. He was, and in fact, if I look at the Accenture account record and I look at contacts, I've got a bunch of people in here, but I'll be able to find that Ryan is listed there. Look at this. This is really interesting. Because I want to know that history that that even if I'm looking at Accenture and Ryan's no longer there, that at one time he was there. And in fact, it's easy to see because Ryan's name is listed under Accenture, but it says his current account name is Simplus. And in fact, this column that's a little bit too small says direct. And that means, is he directly related to Accenture or not? And in this case, he is not directly related. This guy, Rob Morris, is, Rebecca Janes is, so forth. Now this guy, Rich Stack, I can see that he moved to Silverline. I remember now that I see it, but I wouldn't have otherwise. Mike Kohlberg moved to Slalom Consulting. You see this in the Salesforce ecosystem. People kind of bounce around from company to company. I think it happens everywhere, but the interesting thing is if we keep up with these people like Ryan, I did some work with him when he bought some stuff from me when he was at Accenture. And since I know him and I followed him to Simplus, he's also bought some stuff from me at Simplus. So, so I've got that record in here and I can get to it from either him or the account. Had to get a quick drink of water there. So that is how the related contacts work. That's one way with somebody who changes jobs and still works for one of your accounts. You can also use it for somebody who's got different roles at different accounts. So let me look at somebody like Jason Rozinski. Jason is a guy that I've known for a long time who works for Salesforce. So his account that he's related to directly is Salesforce. But take a look at the related list here of related accounts. Oh my gosh, he's got a whole bunch of things here. But look, he's active with everything here except Deloitte. That's because I have related him to these accounts not as a former employee. He didn't work for all these different accounts. He's worked for Salesforce as long as I've known him. But what he is he's a partner manager. That's his job for Salesforce. And so what that means is he works for Salesforce, but his job is to manage all these other partners. And since Stony Point works with all these other partners, it's helpful for us to know that he's got a connection there as well. So he is the partner manager of DXC and this Na'ali'i, it's a Hawaiian company, NTT Data, Scientific Research, Traction on Demand. He's the partner manager for all those. So I know that if I'm having a conversation with Traction on Demand, or if I want to have a conversation with Traction on Demand, I could reach out to Traction on Demand and try to sell them something directly. Or I could go to my friend Jason and say, hey, Jason, do you know anybody at Traction on Demand that you could introduce me to? And he may or may not do that. But what I've done here with these related accounts and related contacts is I have made it possible to track all that. And I showed you how I could edit the individual contact record and just change the account if that person's moving around. In the case of Jason, where he's not moving around, he's just related to others, I've got this button for add relationship. So I'm not adding a new account, I'm not adding a new contact, I'm just adding a relationship. So that word is key here. And I can specify, if he ends up working with Simplus, I can choose that. And he's not a direct employee of Simplus, but he is active, and I can find, the Salesforce partner manager role and move that over. And if I know, that he has a start date and end date, I can get all fancy and put that, but those are not required fields, so I usually don't bother with them. So that is a super useful tool. you can see that information obviously from the contact record or from the account itself. So if I look at Na Ali, I can see real easily that Jason is a related contact, but he's not a direct employee. So super cool stuff. This has to be enabled by an admin. It's it's free, it's included. There's really very little configuration that has to be done, but it does have to be enabled. So if you don't see that in your system right now, ask your admin to enable it. And you just do that by searching for account settings and check the box to allow users to relate a contact to multiple accounts. And then you have to add the related contacts list and the related accounts list. So this normally, if I'm looking at Jason, in regular old Salesforce as it comes out of the box, there's nothing called the related accounts list. You have to actually add that as a related list. But your admin will know what to do there. And that's an existing record that you can do. So the last thing that we have here is record types. And I'm just going to show you real quickly in my system. If I create a new contact, I get to choose what type of contact is this. And that's because in Stony Point, we have multiple record types set up, multiple contact record types. So a general contact is somebody who's just like a potential sales contact. And I want name and a email, title, email address, phone number, all that typical stuff. I like to keep track of people's LinkedIn URL and those sorts of things. But that's just typical stuff. If I create a new contact and they say, this person is actually a candidate for a job, I'm going to want some different information. Notice I've still got name and email address, but I've got a couple of extra things here now. I've got desired compensation. I don't need to track that for Jason Rozinski, or Ryan Northington, my customer. That's not relevant to them, but it is relevant to a candidate who's looking for a job. Or if somebody wants a contract job, I can put the desired hourly rate in. I'm also curious about their certification link. I want to know if this person is certified. I need a link to the URL that proves what certifications they have. And then I've got some other things, do they want contract job or permanent job? What's their work authorization? Is this person a US citizen or H-1B or whatever? How much will they travel? So there are some fields that are the same and some fields that are different. And that's the joy of having the option of record types. And you may, you actually can have contact record types. You can have account record types. You can have opportunity record types. Just about everything you can do in Salesforce allows you to have record types if there are different types of ones. And so based on what's going on, you can enforce different required fields. You can actually display different fields, as I've just shown you. You have different related lists. So it feels like a whole different object, but in reality, they're both contacts. And you would be able to report on them the same way you'd be able to report on any contact. What happens in the past, or even nowadays, people who don't know about this feature will go create a custom object if they want to track candidates. And that's a bad idea, mostly because you don't get all the built-in functionality that sales gives you with every other contact. Remember, at the very beginning of this webinar, I showed you those two icons for account and contact. A contact should be used for any type of person, right? And so if it's a candidate, that's a type of person, you should use a contact record instead of creating a new custom object. And so, but we realize you want to have some different things, so that's where you get into record types. They do have to be configured by the admin, and you want to set up different page layouts, so there's a little bit of effort involved there. I mostly wanted you to see what they are, and I've shown you a couple of examples already. And I wanted you to see what those are, and then if you need to know how to do that, you can take a class and learn. But it's not terribly complex. So the other things, I'll leave this for you to read through on your own because we're out of time. But data validation, as I mentioned, will let you kind of check when a user tries to save a record, if it's incorrect, if there's something that's, they've tried to put in some data that you don't want there, it can flag that and prevent it. And workflow, very similarly, you can set up a workflow that would that would set a specific, follow a naming convention, for example. So you could say, anytime somebody creates an opportunity, I don't want the individual salesperson to name that, because they always come up with these dumb names. I want the opportunity name to be the account name, the value of the deal, and the close date. And that way I can see at a glance, they all follow that same convention: account name, value of deal, close date. And then and that workflow will allow you to force that. So you can learn all about validation rules and workflows in the next Salesforce administration and configuration in Lightning Experience class. Everything I've been showing you today is Lightning Experience. If for some reason you're still on Classic and you still really want to learn Classic, we will still teach that, but it's not available, on a regular schedule. That's something that if you've got a group of people, WebAge can help you line up a group class either on site or virtually. But if you want to take one just as an individual in a virtual class, we've got one coming up on March 16th. It's a full week-long class, but it's good stuff. And it's a lot more hands-on than this webinar. You'd be doing a lot of stuff instead of just listening to me the whole time. Another one that I wanted to highlight is Salesforce Lightning Web Components. This is a whole different ball game. This is coding. This is developer level stuff. But if you're a developer, or if you've got developers in your company who are trying to build stuff on Lightning, and they don't know about Lightning Web Components yet, that is a key class to help them get more productive and to know what to do with Lightning Web Components.